In this video, we are going to learn the first and simplest kind of data binding, the text interpolation or the string interpolation. We'll see different use cases of this feature, what we can and cannot do using the text interpolation. Let's get started. This is part of the video series Angular course. If you have not watched the earlier videos, you can go through them for a better understanding. Just to give you a quick recap of what we already discussed in our previous data binding video, if we have a component and a variable inside a component and we want to display the value of that variable in our template, then we can use text interpolation. And the syntax for doing it is to enclose that variable within two curly braces, as you can see in the template box. But there are other things that we can do using the text interpolation, not just to display a value of a variable. We'll find it out during the video. And since in this kind of data binding, the data goes from the component to the template and not in the reverse direction, this is an example of one-way binding. Let's see how text interpolation can help us solve different problems. To start with, let us assume we want to display the name of the user in our HTML file. To do that, we can simply go to our template file and put a h2 tag and enclose the name of the user within the h2 tag. That will display the name of the user in our page. But the problem with this is the value is hard-coded here. What if we want to get this value from our backend or the API and display it dynamically within the template? But we don't do backend calls within the template. That is something which is done in the component or the TypeScript file. We'll see how we can actually make backend calls, but for the sake of simplicity, let us assume that we have stored the value of the username under a variable user. The challenge now is to display the value of this variable within our template. That is where string interpolation comes into rescue. We can go back to our template and enclose the variable within two pair of curly braces. When you save the file, the result is still the same, but this time it is bringing the value from the TypeScript and is not hard-coded within the template. What if we also want to display a welcome message along with the name of the user? We can do something similar to this. In this case, it will show welcome space Tom. Like you can observe that this text interpolation syntax works just like a placeholder where it replaces the value of the variable with the actual text. You can put it anywhere and the value will be dynamically replaced. The same thing can also be achieved in a bit different way. Let me copy the entire thing. And in this case, let me enclose the entire text within the curly braces. In this case, it is giving us an error saying that error occurs in template of component app component. Because in two pair of curly braces or within the syntax of text interpolation, Angular expects a valid template expression. What is a template expression? It's just a valid JavaScript expression. Since welcome is not a variable, it is an invalid JavaScript expression now. We want welcome to be a simple text. That's why we have to enclose it within two quotation mark as per JavaScript standard and then concat this value with the variable. But we also have to include a space. This still generates the same result but in a different way. Now that we know that we can put any JavaScript expression within the syntax of text interpolation, let us try out few more examples. We can also do arithmetics like 2 plus 2. That will give us 4. We can do little bit of complex things like 2 plus 2, then this one here is a trick question. I want you to guess what will be the result of the last one. Did you guess? Let's see what we have here. We have 4 welcome space 42. Quite confusing, but this is not something which is specific to Angular or something which text interpolation is responsible for. This is normal JavaScript behavior. The order of execution starts from left to right, so it come across 2 plus 2, which are numbers, so it adds them up to 4. So we have 4 here, and whenever it come across a string like welcome, then all the plus sign after the string are considered to be concatenation operator and not the addition operator. So these are basically concatenating 4 and 2 with welcome. That's why the result 4 welcome space 42. Speaking of JavaScript expressions, we can do few more things with that. We can get the length property of the string variable user. So as you can see, it is username length 3 because the length of this string is 3. We can also call functions on such variable. For example, to uppercase will convert our value to uppercase. As you can see, the letters are converted to uppercase. We can also call methods which are defined inside our TypeScript file. For example, let's call a method getMessage which will give us a string from the TypeScript file. We also have to define the same method within the TypeScript file. Let me do that. Let me save both the files. This message here is coming from our function which is defined in the TypeScript file. So far we are only displaying primitive values like string into our template. But what will happen if we have a little complex object in our TypeScript file? Let's see. We have an object named as user object, and then this holds a value like, and the address is, let's say moon. Let's send him to moon, and then I'm terminating the object. Now normally this will be the format in which you will get the data from your backend. It will be a JSON object or the JavaScript object. Let me save it and try to display this information into our template. Then I will add a space between the name and his age. Let's display the value of the age. You can see it has rendered name is Tom and age is 12. Both are coming from an object. We can also assign a dynamic value to any of the HTML attribute that we have. For example, let's have a h2 tag with tooltip as the text, and I will have a title attribute here. Now this title attribute should be dynamically populated with the value from the TypeScript file. I will assign the value of, again we have only one variable as of now, so I will assign the user in the title, and let's see what we have there. Now if I hover over the tooltip, I can see Tom. Now this title is being dynamically populated from the TypeScript file. So text interpolation not only helps you to display certain value to the user, but also it helps you dynamically bind your value with any HTML attribute. However, while this is possible, this is not a recommended way to bind dynamic values to your HTML attribute. For this particular purpose, we have a separate kind of data binding which is known as property binding, and which we will discuss in our next video. But remember, if it's only for display purpose like title, then it is okay to use the string interpolation as well. Last thing I want to mention which you can do with the help of text interpolation is the use of pipe. Now what pipes are, I will discuss that in a separate video. As of now, what you need to know about pipe is these are a certain tool provided by Angular which helps you format your data into the template. Let's see an example of pipe. There is very useful pipe JSON which helps you display the value of a JSON object. We have one JSON object in our component file. Let's use that and display the value of the object. Now as you can see, if I just use text interpolation to display the user object, it won't display properly. It will say object because it is not a string or not a primitive value that can be converted to string and displayed to the user. So to display such a value, we can use a pipe whose name is JSON. You can use a pipe with this particular syntax. It has the value or the variable which you want to format in a certain way. Then a pipe separating the name of the pipe that you are using. In this case, the name of the pipe is JSON, which helps you display the value of a JSON object. And now the value of the object is displayed properly to the user. We also have many other useful pipes like date format, translation, uppercase, etc. We'll look onto them in a separate video. So these are the things that you can do using the text interpolation. But there are certain limitations. I previously mentioned that this pair of braces accepts any valid template expressions, but it doesn't allow you to put any JavaScript code within this curly braces. There are certain limitations. Let's have a look on those limitations. For example, if you are trying to declare a variable, this statement here won't be allowed. If I save this, you can see an error is thrown which says that your template cannot be parsed because it has a token var which is not understood by our template. Even if I remove this and try to only assign a value to a variable and try to save it, that will also not be allowed. And this is one thing that is not allowed, and any operation which uses the equal sign. For example, the plus equals, minus equals, etc. won't be allowed. Also, the increment and the decrement operator are restricted within the text interpolation. We also cannot create instance of any class within the text interpolation. For example, if we want to create the instance of a date object which actually should give you the current date time, instead of giving you current date, it gives you an error which says the property new does not exist on the app component. So this operation won't be allowed. So what if you want to display the current date within the template? Very simple, you just need to have an additional variable, and then in the component file you can have that variable and assign the new instance of the date within that variable. When you save it, there will not be an error, and in the page you can see that the date has printed. Apart from that, any ES6 specific syntax like arrow function will not be also allowed within the text interpolation. You can get a full list of restricted feature of text interpolation within the Angular IO site. Let us go to the docs, within that understanding Angular, and then templates, and finally text interpolation. If you scroll down, then you will see there is a syntax link which says what are the things that are not allowed within the text interpolation. It says the assignment operators are not allowed, the new type of the object related operations won't be allowed, chaining operations like you cannot have multiple expression or multiple statement within your text interpolation, and also increment decrement operators won't be allowed, and finally the ES 2015 plus operators won't be allowed. So even if it supports the normal JavaScript syntax, it does not mean that you can write entire JavaScript logic within that curly braces. This is solely to display certain value to the user. So what it basically means, it means you can have a small expression which is also known as template expression within the pair of curly braces. That expression will be evaluated and finally converted to a string to be displayed to the user. In case you need to refer to this code snippet, I have attached and provided the link in the description. That's about text interpolation. If you have any question, drop them in the comment section, and please subscribe to my channel so that you also get notification about the future videos. You can join the Telegram account if you have any doubt, and I will see you in the next one.